What's goody? Yo, my people. How y'all been, man? I hope y'all have been doing all right. Um, Me myself, I've been growing. I've been learning. I've been gaining understanding, wisdom, and knowledge, man. I hope you have too. I got this article in front of you today about the government gearing up, sourcing guns, and not just guns and lethal weaponry, but military grade weaponry. And we're talking government departments, government organizations that have no business having that kind of military weaponry. And I'm going to get into a bit of why they're arming themselves, where it's going to lead, um, and some of the nationwide societal changes that they're trying to implement. So please rock with me and listen to the video. Why is the IRS buying 40 caliber submachine guns? The weaponization and militarization of the federal government continues unabated as Congress and the states sit back and do nothing. When the corporate media asked the IRS why it needed automatic weapons, millions of rounds of ammunition, and heavily armed staffers trained in the use of deadly force, they said it was for administrative reasons. Hmm. In other words, they coming to get your ass. They coming to get your ass. Somebody, please tell me why the IRS needs um, submachine guns and grenades. Please, somebody, tell me what they want to do. They want to run up on you in your house with the gun pointed to your face, asking where the taxes at, bruh. Where the taxes at? Oh man, I don't know. But anyways, but we now know that the globalists are not just arming the IRS, along with just about every other federal agency. They are militarizing these agencies to the hilt with military grade weapons not available to American citizens. Hmm, I like the way they phrase that, not available to American citizens. They want to arm themselves and leave the American citizens unarmed. Why, for instance, would the IRS need armored vehicles? Damn, flashbang grenades. Damn, that's tactical military right there. Loaded with tear gas and 40 caliber submachine guns. You hear that, bro? Like, somebody tell me, bro, why the hell does the IRS need armored vehicles, bro? You telling me if I skip out on a month of paying taxes, a tank is gonna be outside of my door? The IRS has been arming up for at least 10 years. At the end of 2017, the IRS had 4,487 firearms, 5,062,006 rounds of ammunition in its weapons cache, according to an August 8, 2022 Forbes article. Inflation Reduction Act unleashes a tougher IRS. You can bet they've got a lot more than that stored up 6 years later in 2023. And that's just facts, man. That's just facts. Like if they were packing that much heat in 2017, then I promise you they're packing even more and they're packing even hotter heat today. Here's an excerpt from the Forbes article. The Schumer-Manchin tax bill, known as the Inflation Reduction Act, which passed the Senate on Sunday, raises taxes and will give the IRS billions to go into what the Wall Street Journal called beast mode. The video below by Mark Gifford, a pastor from Lee Summit, Missouri, who runs the God Family and Guns YouTube channel, explains why this militarization is taking place. I'm going to play this video for a little bit, and hopefully we can gain some context as to what's going on here.
I want to take a moment and speak to the militarization of the IRS, because right now what we're looking at is there's actually more CI agents in the IRS than armed police officers with arresting abilities in the Marines. So what is this? Well, let's start with, and we've done a few videos. I'll put a few links below on specifics, but $10 million have been spent on guns, ammo, and a lot of other military equipment, including flash grenades, body armor, armored vehicles. I go on and on. And if you look at the ad, when the IRS was hiring these agents, you look at that ad, it says, must be willing to defend yourself in a hostile situation and use deadly force if necessary. Okay, well, I get that because I arm myself for the same reason. The big question is, why do you need submachine guns? Why all the military equipment? Because ultimately, if you look at the list of the guns they bought, submachine guns are on that list. And what we're talking about is 40 caliber submachine guns for the IRS. And I just kind of want to understand why. Why is it the IRS needs hundreds and hundreds of 40 caliber submachine guns? It's a reasonable question to ask. Because if your goal is to defend yourself against bodily harm, if necessary, why the flash grenades? You know, people don't use flash grenades to defend themselves. They use flash grenades to assault a building or assault a room or a group of people. They don't use it for self-defense at all. And I get the self-defense thing, totally get it. I arm myself for self-defense as well. But I don't go into the world thinking, well, I need to have body armor and flash grenades and submachine guns and other styles of rifles, and I definitely need an armored Humvee, that kind of thing. These things don't cross my mind when I'm conducting just business, you know, and we did a video kind of talking about why, and ultimately leads to seizure of property. When you look at case law of property that was seized by the IRS, the numbers are stunning. Less than 10% of those who have had property seized actually had any sort of tax violation at all when it came out in court. It's just a forced seizure of property. Well, how do you seize property? You need things like submachine guns to do that. That's how you do it. This is not the truth of what's taking place, what they're talking about here, that you need to just be able to defend yourself. This is so beyond that. They're just filled with lies, filled with them. Because ultimately what you have is you have the IRS. You know, you have millions and millions and millions of rounds of ammo. You have thousands and thousands and thousands of guns. You have more armed agents with arresting ability than the U.S. Marines have. Throw in a bunch of other military equipment, you have the militarization of the IRS, all designed to seize property from civilians. Most likely political enemies is my thought. Any thoughts or insight, definitely put that below. Specifically, why does the IRS need submachine guns? I do want to take a moment and add that most people that watch this channel don't subscribe to this channel. Please take a moment and hit that subscribe button because it increases our ability to have this message heard through the algorithm. That link is below. But the most important part of the channel, we take prayer requests and never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. As always, love God, love your family, love guns.
So the article reads on. The IRS has been stepping up its purchases of guns and ammunition even more over than the last 2 years, gobbling up nearly 700,000 in ammo early 2022. That bulk purchase prompted Representatives Matt Gaetz, RFL, and Jeff Duncan of the RSC to introduce the Disarm the IRS Act to prohibit the IRS from buying ammunition. Of course, this bill was dead on arrival because, well, the Union Party in Washington, which includes all Democrats and all solid majority of Republicans, all for a militarized federal government. And one of the reasons for that is because they all have to be on the same page when it comes to stuff like this. There's an agenda and you have to follow. There is no declining. There is no being against. There is no rebelling. You know, once you commit, once you pledge your allegiance, you're all in. That's it. They hate Americans and do not represent Americans. They are globalists whose allegiance is to the military industry biosecurity complex. The IRS is not alone in this militarization. The US Department of Agriculture has also purchased hundreds of 40 caliber submachine guns, presumably for making raids on independent food producers. And that's a special topic which I want to touch on. The fact that a lot of corporations and a lot of billionaires are buying farmlands across the world. And this is something that I've spoken about in my past, one of my past videos about famine to induce depopulation. Corporations and billionaires are buying these farmlands to shorten food production, to shorten food supply. It will happen, you know. It's just a matter of time, how many years we get there. Like I said, there are going to be days where you're going to have to line up just to get scraps in the groceries, you know. There are going to be days where the government will be giving out rations, you know, like one loaf of bread per family, 1 kilogram of meat per family, and this is all you're going to get for the week or something like that, you know. um we're headed there, just a matter of time. They have a special hatred for the Amish, and they go on to list an article which I will get to in the next video. The USDA raided the Fisher family's farm in Farmville, Virginia, and seized their livestock and meat processing facility. As the state condemned and seized their property, they are Amish. The Small Business Administration has also made bulk purchases of guns and ammo. Health and Human Services have done the same. Is the federal government preparing for all-out war against Americans who push back against the government media-approved messaging on pandemics, our involvement in perpetual foreign wars, and other globalist policies? Um, Here's what I think. I think, long story short, yes. You know, there's there's an agenda called martial law, which will come upon us one day, where the police state or a newer police force issued by the government or a new global police force headed by the UN and deployed by the UN will have authority over the people, you know, and that's one of the reasons why they're collecting guns for themselves and taking away guns from individuals. You know, that's why there are a lot of fake school shootings where they promote, where they use innocent children dying in school from guns in order to pass their bills, which take away guns from the market accessible to American citizens. So, and one of the reasons for that is so that when the day comes when they come out with their martial law, when they come out with their police force, that the American people can do nothing about it. Now, I know in the liberal states and the democratic states, they're winning on this forefront in terms of seizing guns against American citizens. But when you get to the South and I think Central America, um, you know, you have a lot of white families there who refuse to give up their guns to the government. And then that's a good thing, man. That's a good thing. Personally, I'm for gun ownership. You know, we just got to be responsible with how we handle these guns and responsible with our emotional control. But all in all, man, I feel like we shouldn't have to rely on a police force or strangers coming to save us when our homes are being invaded. You know, as a man, it is your duty, it is your responsibility to protect your family, to protect your wife, and to protect your children. And you know, you need guns to do that sometimes, unfortunately. Yes, I was back on the subject of martial law. So the idea of martial law authority when it comes to forcing down a regime, down the people's throats. They tried they tried testing it during COVID, during the lockdown. And I'm sure some of you remembered, you had police telling you to go inside, to stay inside, to not be inside past curfew, as if the COVID, as if the COVID virus went home or like would disappear after a certain time, you know. Um, and it was even worse in European states because in European states the police were more aggressive during the lockdown. Like if you were outside after a certain time, they would shout at you. They would talk to you like dogs. Yell at you, just being very aggressive. And that was just a testing phase about this martial law. As they continue to gather guns for themselves, it's just a matter of getting closer to that day. All right, you get the sense that maybe, just maybe, enough of us are waking up that the globalists are preparing to silence us once and for all. And the only way to complete that task is by force. All it would take is to make an example out of a few dozens, maybe a few hundreds outspoken conservatives. The goal going forward would be to criminalize all speech that contradicts the messaging coming out of the government and its corporate partners. At that point, the globalists' hope would be for the conservatives to start turning on each other out of fear that they could be next. Cut a deal to turn in a fellow conservative, thereby saving your own skin from the reign of terror. This is how life goes down under the fascist regimes like the one now in power. So don't be surprised if they move in this direction. Yeah, there's another thing, man. They want the people to police themselves. They want the people to tell on each other when they're acting against societal norms, when they're going against agenda, when they're going against policy. For example, kind of kind of something like what I'm doing now, like spreading truth, trying to expose the shadows behind the curtains. If you go on to do that, your neighbor will in turn expose you, or to hand your name over to the authorities. In turn, that neighbor will be rewarded in bread, meat, or resources, or whatever, while you're taken away, so that nobody hears the truth. And yeah, that's going to come in a more harsh time when resources are extremely scarce. It would probably happen after they steal yet another election in November 2024. They monitor everyone's online speech, so it would be easy to pull off. They make some high profile arrests and incentivize people to turn on each other. They make some high profile arrests and incentivize people to turn on each other. This would be especially effective in a time of economic hardship when people have hungry family members. Turn in a neighbor on false charges and get a month's worth of food delivered to your door. The indictments of Trump supporters in Georgia and Michigan have already sent a chilling message. But the deep state is moving on more than that on one front. They've also been arresting pro life protesters and throwing the book at them, prosecuting them under the corrupt FACE Act. Protesting abortion has been a mainstay of American life since the early 70s. Now, the government is cracking down and sending messages that things are different. Um, such protests will no longer be tolerated. So this is an extract about a group of protesters who were found guilty of violating the FACE Act, which is freedom of access to clinic entrances. They were immediately incarcerated following the verdict and could face more than a decade in prison for their efforts to prevent women from killing their newborn babies, preborn babies, that is. All right, so you get that, right? So you can now get 10 years or more for peacefully praying with and counseling women outside of an abortion clinic. The article goes on to explain that these pro-life Americans were considered by the judge to have committed a crime of violence simply for holding pro-life views and being willing to share them publicly in proximity to a baby butchering clinic. In the month of August alone, 4 Americans had their homes broken into and invaded in pre-dawn raids by the FBI. which, in case, executed the suspect in cold blood. One case involved a 100% disabled U.S. military veteran in Henderson, Tennessee, who was unarmed at the time he was shot on August 16. Another case involved a 7-year-old man in Provo, Utah, who was obese and was unable to walk without a cause, but he was shot dead by the FBI on August 9. Now, I don't mean to paint a bad picture of the FBI here, but at the same time, who knows what they're up to behind closed doors. I just want to say when it comes to stories like this, you can't just go off on believing in what you're reading. These veterans, they're being proclaimed as innocent and unarmed, but honestly, who knows what went down on that day when they died? Um, and maybe they were guilty of something. I have no idea who these men are, and I'm not going to hold the FBI to killing them. I don't know what happened. So the author continues to state that from what he can tell, none of the poor souls posed any sort of imminent threat to their families or communities. We don't know that for sure. The Utah man posted threats against Biden on his Facebook page, but clearly lacked the ability to carry them out. Now, here's my concern. Just because he lacked the ability to carry them out, he's innocent? Like, if you're gonna pose a threat, if you're gonna post threat against a head of state, you can't be shocked when they come banging on your door. That is that is consequence of action. The feds could have arrested the guy peacefully while he was pulling out of his driveway. Peacefully, he literally threatened the president. Come on now, you're not being realistic. But no, they needed to make a statement. After enough Americans are executed in this fashion, and fear of speaking out becomes ingrained in society, I can see perhaps sooner than we think when political dissidents will simply disappear. No one will know what happened to them as they vanish into the goulash. The goulash. Um, yeah, so the author continues talking about how you should stand up against the government not and just fight when they try and take your guns away and all that good stuff. And that is pretty much the conclusion for this article. But that is not where I wanted to leave things. I wanted to show you guys this. This is an article about the increasing trend of political unrest in the United States. That includes violent demonstrations, strikes, and anything of that sort. Yeah, let's get into this. This is one of the main reasons why the government wants to take away guns from the people and in the same time arm themselves and increase their military arsenal. So, civil unrest is on the rise. And this data is from the 2020 Global Index. And that shows that civil unrest has actually doubled over the last decade. That's very interesting to know. So between 2011 and 2018, the number of both protests and riots roughly doubled, while the number of general strikes quadrupled from 33 events in 2011 to 135 in 2018. So you see that is an upward trend. We're seeing more and more political unrest. We're seeing more and more um, violent demonstrations from the people. So in most of these situations, these movements avoid violence. However, both violent and nonviolent demonstrations increased in frequency over the last decade. And here, for some context, here are some more numbers about the nature of civil unrest between 2011 and 2018. So 64% of protests were nonviolent demonstrations. 6% were general strikes. 30% were classified as riots. 4,700 nonviolent demonstrations and 2,200 riots. And this is just a chart illustrating the upward trends in riots, in general strikes, and nonviolent demonstrations. And as you can see, like beginning of um, beginning of the decade, demonstrations were actually on decline. for about 2 years before they started uprising in 2013. Riots had reached a peak in 2014, while we saw a brief upkick in general strikes in 2015. Now, unfortunately, this data only goes up to 2018. I would really like to see what it looks like between 2018 and now. I'm sure those numbers have risen even more, especially violent riots, man. And this is the reason why I wanted to show you guys this. I wanted you guys to gain to see the context around this growth in civil unrest, and this is leading towards something, man. Like seeing more and more people demonstrate against the government, oppose the government. You know, it shows that this is leading towards an event, or perhaps leading towards a breakdown in society. Um, Clearly, the people are unhappy, and if you look at history, growth in civil unrest, growth in dissatisfaction within its people, is a huge sign of the collapse of a nation or country, along with other things, which I'm not trying to get into right now. Um, but yeah, man, this is leading towards something. All right, I'm gonna start towards the lower half of this subtitle. So the number of riots around the world has increased 282% since 2011. This trend peaked in 2014, especially in countries with fragile democratic institutions, before plateauing since 2016, with at least 300 riots occurring every year. And so, some of the reasons why these riots around the world have occurred were unhappy teachers, um, unhappy laborers, perhaps could be shortage of funds, dissatisfaction with salaries, also government corruption, which is probably like the number one reason behind demonstrations. In the area where I'm from, there has been a lot of demonstrations within the last 2 years, and unfortunately, they've turned out violent to the point where police have shot at the people with rubber bullets. Um, and yeah, man, unfortunately, people have lost their lives. And it's a shame that it gets to this point, because a nation should not be consuming itself from within. A nation should not be at war with itself. A tribe should not be at war with itself, because once that happens, then your enemies win. Your enemies overtake you and they consume you. But something I really wanted to highlight about this is this point about the United States. The United States arrested more than 1,000 people in the nation's capital protesting against police violence, gun violence, and environmental issues. I just want to highlight this police violence and gun violence. They're gonna they're gonna use this reason as one of the main reasons to take your guns away from you. They're gonna put a lot of weight in gun violence and in innocent people and innocent children dying, and using that as a catalyst to draw bills, to create laws, to administrate new laws that shut down legal gun vendors, that pretty much make it illegal for a man to carry a gun. Yeah, and it's all towards getting as much guns off the street as possible so that when that day comes, when society does collapse, the government can establish martial law because they have a majority of the guns, and it'll be a sloped battle against the people, and eventually the government will win, and after that it'll be more like a martial state, like having police dictate how you go about in public, when it's time to go home, when it's time to go out, how long you're allowed to be outside for. Maybe perhaps you'll be allowed outside for like an hour or two, get your daily quota of sunlight and then get back inside. And now that I think about it, with digital IDs, it's easier to keep track of stuff like that. You know, um, when you go outside, you tap in, you check in, you let the government know that you're outside, and then when you're walking out in the park, an officer comes to you, scans your digital ID, and can see that you've been outside for an X amount of hours. And once that happens, it's back inside. And yeah, this is what the world is coming to, man. And I just want you guys to be aware so that you're not surprised when you see these things happening, man. So that you're not scared, you're not traumatized, and you knew you knew that this was going to happen because some random guy on this ill spectrum page on YouTube told you about it. So you guys stay safe. You guys take care of yourselves. Take care of your mental. Take care of your mind. Take care of your hearts. You know, um, keep your standards and keep searching for truth, for knowledge, for wisdom, and for guidance each and every single day. Because the world around us is crumbling, man, and there's a great darkness coming. There's a great darkness coming, and we're gonna need faith, and we're gonna need devotion to the Most High, to carry ourselves with strength, with vigor, with life, with intent and with motivation and with willpower to carry ourselves through these coming days of darkness. You guys take care of yourselves, man. I'm out.